New Testament survey, Galatians to Colossians, book of Philippians chapter 2, this is lesson for lecture 16, part 2, on page 2. Verse 14, do all things without murmurings and disputings, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Yea, and if I be offered upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I joy, and rejoice with you all. For the same cause also do ye joy, and rejoice with me. One theme of Philippians is, or maybe the theme is, joy in suffering. Have you heard that before?
Yes.
For the book of Philippians, yeah. So we kind of look for that here. Joy. You're in a bad place, bad nation. So how's your attitude here at church? You know, at church meaning when you come and meet together. We say at church, but a church is the body of believers. So how is your attitude? Do you do all things without murmuring? Let's just talk about when you're at the church services. I know at home you stink on that. I do too. But how about at church service? Are you one of those that occasionally or even routinely has a bad attitude here when we meet? There are some that do. So here's the question. Is it ever okay to murmur or get in an argument or dispute? Is it ever okay?
Let's do all things.
Yeah. So it would not be okay ever to murmur or dispute. Hey, no, I disagree. There's a way to disagree and not get in a dispute. There's a way to make a how do you say that? A helpful criticism? There's a way of, I don't know. Constructive criticism without murmuring and complaining behind people's backs. Oh, how bad it looks to the lost, or to non-Baptists, to have fellow church members, at least at church, or even outside the church body or meeting, complain and murmur about and to each other. So if we have visitors and they see that, wow. I didn't have someone complain, but this bothered me. I won't say who it was, but recently we had visitors show up, and there's only a few people upstairs at that time. And then they walked, and someone said, "Hey, hi, welcome. Hey, you know, we're just here. Good to have you here, and glad you're here. Hey, you know, you can pick a pew, you can pick any pew you want, you can pick your nose." What? And they just went off talking about other things and sat down, and just kind of a careless, almost, I don't know what. It was just weird. And I was like, oh man. So I went over and talked to him right away and said, "Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Have a seat here." There's ways of social interacting that can be a great help to people, or can really turn people off. So that wasn't murmuring or disputing, I know. Let's just be careful. We don't want to turn people off, both when we have church services or out in public. And we're going to stand in judgment for the ramifications of this tragedy of having murmurings and disputings, and what that does. So, talk about shining lights. How can we be one who shines as lights in the world? Well, it doesn't talk about that here. So, shining light, what does that mean to you? Light shining.
Visible witness.
Okay, visible witness.
Good testimony.
Good testimony. We need to be getting the truth out. It involves getting the truth out. But shining light is glorifying. It's pleasurable. It's wonderful. It's a nice person. It's showing joy, pleasantness, being friendly, showing love and concern, being humble, having the right attitude, taking a no reputation, no strife, no murmuring, complaining, disputing, like-minded with each other. To tell the world about the light of the world, which is Jesus Christ, but all that with it, not just, I want to give it to you gun barrel straight on the light of the world, and here's the light. Jesus Christ died for you, and so you don't have to go to hell. You're going to burn in hell otherwise. Well, you're getting the truth out, but the light of the world involved, there's, I think, more with that than just the truth embodied in just some words that come out of your mouth. Do you think that the typical crooked and perverse lost person in this town is going to be attracted to you when you appear glum, not so happy, not humble at all, overconfident, complaining, prideful, and arrogant?
No.
No way. In fact, he'll say, whatever that guy believes, or whatever church he goes to, I'm not going there. No way. Maybe in their mind they're thinking that. Oh, will we stand in judgment for that? And I'm sure I've done that to people. Your pastor is putting a lot of effort, it says running and laboring and teaching and preaching to you these important Bible principles. Oh, how we will rejoice when we look back at our lives on earth and see that we did hold forth the truth. And we did become more and more like-minded while we're in this compromising and perverse nation. And we stayed and shined brighter and brighter as lights through the darkness. We didn't labor in vain. It will be worth it all. Oh, when we see Jesus, but look what we did. And hopefully you've got a pastor and have had pastors and will have a pastor who helps lead you in all this. And it's not him, and really the point of this is him laboring in vain. And I don't know if I should say this, but I am not going to labor in vain. Or at least not continually. So if I'm going to labor, I want some product out of that. I want fruit. Don't you? So I guess it's the whole point of laboring, of course, to please the Lord, but I want to see something of it. And just think if you preached and preached and preached, or evangelized and evangelized and evangelized, and nothing was happening. No fruit. Months, maybe even some years go by. Eventually you're going to go, nah, something's got to change. I can see that happening, sure. Oh, how we will rejoice, yes. Paul exhorts us to be like-minded, lowly, and lights. That's in red, so exhorting us here to be like-minded and lowly and lights. Online students, 4 of the 5 are not paying attention right now. They're eating. No, they're not, but there's something's going on there. I didn't answer the question. 19 through 24. I'll read a verse, you read a verse. But I trust in the Lord Jesus to send Timotheus shortly unto you, that I also may be of good comfort when I know your state.
For I have no man like-minded who will naturally care for your state.
For all seek their own, not the things which are Jesus Christ.
But ye know the proof of him, that as a son with the Father, he hath served me with me in the gospel.
Him therefore I hope to send presently, so soon as I shall see how it will go with me.
But I trust in the Lord, that I also myself shall come shortly.
Amen. So Timothy here, his right-hand man. So think about this. Paul, as a church-planting evangelist, that's what I'm calling him right here, had many churches that he was responsible for, including this church at Philippi. Thus Paul would send those men, well, like Timothy, there are others, Titus, various others, that he had trained and that were like-minded to help the newly birthed churches stay on the right track. That's what he was doing. And this would be a good study, a good study, and kind of a lesson development and sermon development for someone to do on how Paul took, what he did when he got a church started and how he did that, and then he got a man trained and took that, and just all the examples in the Bible of that. They function somewhat like itinerant preachers, maybe. Or maybe even itinerant pastors. So how would we apply this methodology today? And I don't have anything on that. So Paul here is going to send Timothy, who he trained, to help them.
Philippi?
And care for their state. To Philippi, yeah. So how would we do that today?
As a missionary?
I don't know. How would we apply what we've just read to today? Anything is better than nothing here.
Well,
So,
it would be like when Brother Long starts a church down in Mexico and then he turns it over to somebody else after he's trained a bunch of guys.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's reasonable. Anybody else? Thank you. Okay, well thank you, ma'am. Great discernment, and I agree with that. It's not exactly what he did. And I don't know if we can function exactly like the Apostle Paul, but he went and souls were saved, and I guess the church was started, but they were pastorless. I mean, he was doing a lot of church planting, and there was probably a shortage of men. And here he says, I got no one else like-minded right now other than Timothy. And he talks about Epaphroditus, but it's all context. Well, something to think about. What a sad commentary. For at that point in time, Paul only had Timothy, who was like-minded and willing to do the Lord's will, whatever it would be. It's very true today. So many men in a church are not even faithful to attend all the services. So let's think about our church. You think about yours. And then, of the others who are faithful to attend, let's say, how many of those are actually like-minded? And of these that are like-minded, of those, how many are willing to not pursue their career, job, lifestyle, etc., and serve with the pastor in the gospel ministry, giving it all they can? How many? How many would that be? Timothy had proved himself to be worthy of their respect there at Philippi, and I guess he's going to be a pastor. So it's very wise and biblical to have a future pastor serve with their own pastor in the gospel ministry for a time before going out on their own. So part of the training is OJT. It's not just here, you get some opportunities to preach and teach. So the gospel ministry, well, it's hard to explain all that. The best I can do it here, because you got limitations on your job. I can't have you over at my house while I'm doing all the stuff I do, but I need to expose you through training for that as much as I can.
It's different. A lot of churches don't want to, or a pastor doesn't think that he's capable of training his own men.
Yeah.
So they get shipped off to a college or
right.
whatever, and then who knows what happens there. But
yeah.
So yeah, I think the pastor has to be willing to do that, like you are.
Yeah. Sure am. I have a strong desire to. It's not like, oh, I guess I got to. I want to. If men would just, quit their jobs, and everything would be fine. Let's go on. Verse 25.
Okay, you start.
Yeah, I'll take care of you though. Yet I suppose it necessary to send you to Epaphroditus, my brother and companion in labor and fellowship. Let me read it again. Yet I supposed it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and companion in labor and fellow soldier, but your messenger, and he that ministered to my wants. For he longed after you all, and was full of heaviness, because he had heard that he had been sick. Someone do 27?
For indeed he was sick nigh unto death, but God had mercy on him, and not him only, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow.
I send him therefore the more carefully, that when you see him again, ye may rejoice, and that I may be the less sorrowful. Receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness, and hold such in reputation, because for the work of Christ he was nigh unto death, not regarding his life, to supply your lack of service toward me. Whoa! Ends that chapter. Bing! So Epaphroditus, interesting guy. Apparently he was on Paul's mission team, so he's sending him, so he must be with him, and was Paul's right-hand man. Well, he ministered to his wants. It wasn't just like, hey, what do you want? I'm here, I'm a chef. I think it was just like a right-hand man. His his assistant. And he might have been a part of that church body there in Philippi earlier, or just very familiar with it because they cared about each other. I'm not sure on that. Paul must have been begging for helpers to come help him from Philippi. And Epaphroditus was the only one that came to help from that church. As you look at this, and I reread it and made sure I was thinking right, he's talking about them. And to supply your lack of service toward me. That church is supposed to... No, he's not talking about sending money. He wasn't talking about money at all here. There's men coming to help them. That church should have been doing that. And our church, well, we need to be doing the same thing. There's people that need help. What are you guys doing? I'm in Bible college now. I can't go. Oh. I don't know about that. But, okay, well, finish up Bible college quickly. Get trained to where you think you're trained enough and then go. Well, I don't know. I mean, it'd be a hard life. It sure could be. So just throwing $50 in the plate every month doesn't necessarily count as helping a missionary on the mission field. I think it's a good thing to do. At least $50. They don't really need your money so much. What they need, I think, is you there serving with them, helping. There's so many areas of need. Epaphroditus was working so hard, it's kind of weird to think about this, that he was physically near death. He had been sick, so 26, was he sick because he was working so hard, or did he get sick and then he was working hard and he almost died? Maybe he was an older gentleman, or just a sickly fellow. But he worked hard, because no one else was helping, and he was going to make sure the job got done. Well, Epaphroditus was to be received at that church. What does that mean? Where does that say that? Verse 29?
Receive him therefore in the Lord.
Yeah, and hold him in reputation. So, does that mean he was become a member, or just allow him to minister to you as he's from our church? Come on in there and fellowship with him. He's probably functioning as a pastor, is my view, but I'm not sure. What do you think?
I would say so.
When it says receive him, we see these. It sounds like there's to my view, or in my view, it's a transferring of membership. But I can't prove that. That's just my understanding of it. Well, in a little secondary application here as we close, in our church and most churches, there's a few men and ladies doing almost all the work. And I don't know if they're nigh unto death, but it can be hard. It can be stressful, busy. And there's others that are hardly doing anything, and you're like, what's the deal? Well, be like an Epaphroditus. Do it nigh unto death. Maybe the pastor will scold the others, but to supply your lack of service toward me. Not regarding his life. Amen. Let's take a break.
I think I'll